Hello everyone. Welcome to the second session of today in room 4. And the title of the talk is Architecture 2.0, Building for Sustainability. And I'll just wait a couple more seconds for people to, technology to kick in. So welcome. Let me introduce you the speaker for today, Adrian Norton, and I'm hoping I didn't butcher your name. Adrian is an IT consultant specialized in software architecture with experiences in many fields involving programming and designing enterprise-grade solutions. As a CTO, Adrian currently leads the technology-related topics at Zenica Singapore, career learning paths, internal training, trend analysis. So Adrian, let's all welcome Adrian on the chat. And Adrian, just come on board and welcome.
Hi everyone. Thank you for the presentation there. Okay, just give me 1 second so that I set up everything. All right, I think we're good. Okay, and yep. So thank you for joining this presentation. And yep, today we're going to talk about Architecture 2.0. Architecture 2.0, it doesn't exist, all right? It's a proposition. You might know architecture, you might be architects yourself, or you might be interested in architecture. And at some point, we always wonder what it is exactly. That's the first question. And also, how does it help, right? And I want to invite you on a journey where we are going to try to see how we can have a new objective for architecture. That objective would be to build for sustainability. And yeah, I invite you to this journey, right? And let's get started. So I won't really talk about myself because it has already been done by Andre. Thank you very much. Just quick thing, I'm a husband and father first. That's maybe what you'd like to know. And I don't know if it's going to be relevant, but I do hope so when we explore further sustainability, right? Oh, something else. I'm an Agile practitioner myself. It was non-stated as well, meaning that I also co-organize the Agile Dojo here in Singapore. So if you want to join at some point, we can have some discussions. All right, so let's start the journey, right? 2.0 and trying to explore what we can do with that. So the first thing, like in every story, right, you need to have a bit of an introduction, some context first, right? That's the first chapter of our book. And for that chapter, I invite you to consider this long time question. What is the difference between an architect and an engineer? You can see that usually in job description posts and things like that, and it's not really clear, right? If we go to the meaning of the words themselves, one comes from the Greek word, and it means lead builder. That's what an architect is. And engineer is actually a creator, a deviser, and that comes from a Latin word, right? What we see is that this overlaps at the end of the day, right? We are not completely sure if they do things differently. And it's all a question of focus, basically. The architect will mainly work on the strategic aspect of things when they build, and they are vision focused. They're trying to align everything with some kind of vision that they have to state. Whereas the engineers, they are tactical, right? They are solution focused. They have approaches where they need to create something and they will devise something relevant for it. So one is more strategic. It's more about the big picture. They're leading everything in order to integrate basically the solutions. The others are creating. You can have architects that are a bit of engineers, and you can have engineers that do a bit of architecture as well. So this overlaps quite well. So now that this is out of the way, let's see what we expect exactly from architects. We expect them options. We expect options from them. That's what Gregor Opp said, right? Architects sell option. And for that, you set options to align the vision, operations, basically everything. you have a bunch of things to provide, right? So usually architects, we ask from them that they provide IT standards, that they work with resources that can be infrastructure, that can be coding, that can be a lot of things. And we also ask them to grow the talents, the IT talents. So we ask a lot of things from architects, just to give you a bit more context. So one might ask, can we learn architecture? Is there a career path in architecture? How can I get there? Okay, that's also something that people ask themselves. What I say usually is that today, as of today, an architect is more or less a Swiss Army knife. We ask so many things from them. We ask them to be good in decision making, in engineering as well, because otherwise the engineers won't believe them, right? They won't trust them for their architectures. We also ask them to be very knowledgeable in some methodologies so that they can also apply their knowledge on common issues. We ask different postures from them. We ask them to be advisors and consultants first. Sometimes they should provide some advice on how things should be done. We ask them to be facilitators as well, to provide the right environments in order for people to get rid of roadblocks in order to make decisions that are impactful for their architectures. And last but not least, we ask them to be leaders. Remember, an architect is a lead builder, so it's in the name, it's embedded. We asked leadership from them. And how you do that? You learn with experience today, most of the time, right? But you also learn from failures. When we talk about Agile, DevOps and all, you can see that failure is at the core of it. And when we talk about failure, it's not a bad thing in Agile world, right? It's the first attempt in learning. It's the same for DevOps. We try, we put in production, it fails, we can roll back, we can do a lot of things, right? But failure is at the core of everything these days. And can we really fail as architects? That's something that we can talk about afterwards. But also, one of the main things is today architects, they learn from failures. So the best school of architecture today is experience, is failing through experience, and is learning from your past failures. But is that sustainable? I mean, what are the implications of that? Let's explore a bit more. Today you have multiple kinds of failures as well. Let's talk about them because they are quite important. You have failures for technical debt, meaning that you accumulate a lot of complexity in your application. The fact that with Conway's law, the bad things, the messy things in your organizations are projected in your architectures, that's not helping at all, right? And sometimes you have people asking you at some point, oh, can we have this new feature? But you can't deliver anymore with the correct time to market because what you've built so far is actually quite messy. This is not an architect, by the way, if they ask you that, right? Let's move on. You have some fears coming from biases and marketed recipes as well. The biases, basically, when you're going to say something to some people, they are going to consider it from their point of view, and they might not accept what you're saying because it doesn't make any sense in their own context. So because of miscommunication, sometimes you have misalignment and you have architecture failure at some point. The marketed recipes are other things, right? They are all the things out there, all the new trends about microservice architecture, about a bunch of things that people don't understand and they think is going to solve their problems. Let's look at some examples. I've heard that, right? If we move to a microservice architecture, we'll make our application more maintainable. Today we have a monolith, we want to get there. But the team that was saying that to me, it was only 5 developers. And they didn't even knew what domain they were working on. So it will not help them. I mean, they were trying to refactor a whole monolith because they thought that it was too bad, it was a bit tangled. What they should have done is refactor it a bit better and understand what they were dealing with before even considering this. I had another team talking to me and they said, oh, we have an issue with our deliveries and we don't push quality in production because business can't make up their mind. And at the last minute, they will add new features. They will ask us to fix things. And that's why our quality that is pushed in production is mediocre. And that came from a so-called agile dev team, right? I also had this. So you see, that's an example of bias right here. I also had this example. We are going to save money and time putting our whole infrastructure in the cloud. And that was from a manager that was running a whole department that had 0 engineers knowledgeable in cloud. Okay, that was first run by traditional system administrators, and they had no idea what it meant in terms of cost, in terms of talents that were required and all. So the problem with marketed recipes with biases and all is that you take wrong decisions sometimes, right? And all of these are famous last words. This leads to failures. Okay, let's explore further. You have other kinds of failures, and one of the main kind, and I want to really focus on that one for the follow-up, is the failures from obsolescence and deprecation. We have a full cemetery of dead projects, dead technologies, and today it's growing even more. And we have this over issue that we have these dead technologies, but we also have the zombies. We have walking dead technologies. We have COBOL. We still have web server application servers everywhere, old versions of it that still run on Java 1.5 sometimes only. We have to manage that. And as architects, you can't just, keep stay blind on this. You have to tackle it. You have to isolate it. You have to manage it. And you have to remember that whatever decision you make as an architect, all these things, this cemetery, these walking deads and all, these were modern techs before. These were lively techs, right? They were live and they were striving. And then at some point, they were just not anymore. So whatever you're building, whatever technology you use, they might end up in the same state. And today, maintaining legacy systems is a bit like that, right? It's dealing with zombies. And you try to build a fence for these zombies, and you try to make a living on the side. Try to make people rebuild society, right? And try to isolate this dead society that are coming in. But the problem, and that's the same with Walking Dead, right, is that you keep creating zombies. Maybe you should stop. Maybe it's time to stop creating zombies. Otherwise, you'll get overrun. Okay, we have some failures from traditional architecture, really. And keeping a blind eye on this, it's not going to help. Today, architecture is overrun by complexity. I mean, when you have freshers and you have engineers that don't even understand all the implications of data architecture, of cloud architecture, of so many things, everyone is overwhelmed. We have a cognitive overload right here. People tend to design these kind of things, right? You start with integration security, you put a bunch of things together, and that's what architecture is today. And I am guilty myself, because one of the main problem when you deal with monsters is that you tend to become a monster yourself. You tend to enjoy these kind of things, right? Because intellectually, well, you feel relevant. You understand all these things. It makes sense for you. There was this quote from Nietzsche: if you gaze for long into an abyss, then the abyss gazes back into you. That's a bit like that. You are becoming the monsters that you're building. And sometimes, you think you should make things simpler, but as Dave Thomas, the founder of Yo, says, simplicity is usually the road that is not taken. And most architects, they will maintain this complexity because they enjoy it. Let's be honest. We like the world of zombies we live in. We like the world of monsters. But now, maybe we need to change. We need to shift our focus. Otherwise, everything will start crumbling. All right? You remember, we build cities, we build a lot of things. At some point, if we don't maintain, if we don't know how to do it correctly, it's going to collapse. And we don't want collapse. Let's breathe now. That was a bit stressful, right? We got all these things going on, over complexity and all. We got architects that build monsters, and you look at the Twitter architecture diagram, for example, it's kind of crazy. You got asynchronicity everywhere. I mean, how can a normal mind have all this in their brain and still be normal? I wonder. So let's breathe. And let's start our journey for reinventing architecture in order to tackle all these issues, right? Let's go on a retreat first, and let's talk about sustainability, what it means, this word, because that's an idea that we have, right? Today, when we develop solutions, usually we address the needs of people. Or if you're not so ethical, sometimes you want to create a need also for them and you want to create addiction. Okay, well, let's not go there at all. So if you provide something that is good for people, and if it's good for your own profit, for your business, then you're equitable, right? You have fairness here. That's what we are today. Where we are today is here. We are equitable most of the time when we design architectures. If you add another parameter, the planet or your environment, in order to be a bit more inclusive, you can design other kinds of architectures, right? You can have viable products. If they are profitable and they're good for the planet, it's viable. It might not answer the people's needs, but you can do it, right? If you have something that addresses the people's needs, you don't make any money out of it, but it's sustainable. It's not sustainable, sorry, it's livable because you still have the resources to provide these kind of products again and again to the people, but you don't make money out of it. So you don't have growth, you don't have the foundation of our current society, which is still based on that, right? On making money. Sustainability is actually the balance of these three P's: people, profit, and planet, in a large sense, right? So in a larger sense. So we may have ideas, right, for Architecture 2.0 around this concept of sustainability. But let's explore a bit further. Let's try to learn some new techniques, right? We are on our training journey now. This is our second chapter. So let's explore. We have a lot of learnings from Agile because now Agile is, I wouldn't say completely mature, right? But it aged a bit, right? So now we can have some learnings. One of the main learnings is actually a very good foundation of Agile. What we worry about in Agile, if you look at it, we don't really care about the targets themselves, right? Because the targets are moving. You have the initial target, then you have a change there. So the targets are moving. What we focus on in Agile is the course correction, is when the target is changing, how reactive can you be changing your focus? How can you keep your speed getting there? What does it mean when you change course? So you have a real focus on change. So we don't think target anymore with Agile. We think about change. That's the first learning. Okay, let's learn a new technique. We learn things from DevOps as well. The main thing, well, the best thing that can come out of DevOps, in my opinion, is how to lay a foundation for continuous production, for continuous deployment. And the keyword here is continuous, right? So we don't think punctual in DevOps. We have this infinite cycle that keeps running and running, and we still provide value continuously. Okay, so that's the idea of DevOps, is to, be like a Gatling machine gun, not think of punctual incisions, but really continuously have a value stream. Okay, let's start to explore a bit further again. We have some learnings from low tech. Low tech is a movement, it's not new. I mean, people talk about it a lot because now, the ecological questions, they come back usually in the press and all in the media. But low tech is a movement that started even around the 50s and the 60s, from back then. And the first thing you can ask yourself when you have a low tech approach is, do I even need digitalizing a process or something like that? Because we can have other ways in technology in order to improve it. We have mechanics, we have a bunch of things that are not related to high tech. High tech, one of the main issue for it is that it's kind of hungry for resources. That's why we don't think it's really sustainable in a way most of the time if you pursue only high tech at some point. That's the point of view of low tech people. They think that it should be controlled. And I can give you some numbers to just consider why it's important to deal with low tech sometimes. In 2017, 3 years ago, there was this study by McKinsey and another company, and what they found out is that the production of greenhouse gases from the IT equipments, and that was back then when there were mainly servers, right? From that point of view, it was 2% of the emissions of greenhouse gases, the IT world. And that's the equivalent of the aviation sector. So basically, the flight sectors, you were emitting as much CO2 and other greenhouse gases as the aviation industry. And now I think it's around 3%, so it keeps growing. And when you saw that during that time when the study was made, we had 17 million servers running, but we didn't have that many devices. But today we have something like 36 billion devices that are connected, that are running, that have been built. And when you know that more than a third of the emissions and the consumption of resources and all these problems, they come from the creation, the manufacturing of these devices, you know that there's something wrong, right? You know that maybe we should stop producing that much and just, if there is a need, maybe we should go there. But if there is no need, maybe we should stop doing it, because otherwise it's not sustainable. Maybe in 2 years, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, we will stop having all the resources to build these. But we have another way, right, to tackle the issue. We have recycling. But recycling, it comes with some constraints. So do we take them into consideration as architects? And as architects, even software architects, you can wonder, when I build a solution, do I think I will need the latest technology? Do I think that I need the latest, GPU, or the latest brand, the latest memory, everything? So we might want to be a bit more inclusive. Want to be more inclusive, we might want to consider running our applications also with low latency network. We want to see if we can also target a bit more people that are digital illiterate. So we have a lot of digital illiteracy in the world, right? People are not digital natives everywhere, and you might want to include them also. And that's one of the purpose of low tech, is to worry about people. You remember in the 3Ps, to build sustainability is to also remind that we are building solutions for people and not just for business. Another question that we get is cloud helping, right? Because everybody's moving to the cloud these days. I mean, most of the SMEs, and you got all these announcements from the big corporations that, they develop partnerships with Amazon, with Google, with Microsoft, and with others. Is cloud really helping us to build sustainability? It's a big question. They do have initiatives to recycle hardwares to make sure that they have zero emissions of greenhouse gases. They also try to tackle a lot of things. But today, you might want to ask yourself, am I building a sustainable architecture if I am bound to a partner where I don't know if they're going to stop their business at some point? I don't know if they're going to decommission the services that I use today. So you have to know what is the critical path of your business, and to see if it really makes sense to partner on everything with the cloud, or if it's just for very specific aspects. So we need to control growth, right? We need to have a strong focus on hardware usage these days, and maybe cloud is covering that. So if you're a cloud engineer or cloud architect that worries about these things, that's okay. If you're just delegating, maybe you might want, as an architect, worry about these things a bit more. We have learnings from other fields. And I want to talk to you about sustainable gardening, right? And you're going to ask me, what is the deal with this? I mean, that doesn't concern IT at all. Well, we can learn a lot, to be honest, from this, because you have a lot of principles. And if we look more closely to these principles, gardening is a bit like maintaining a software system and an information system as a whole. And one of the first principles of sustainable gardening is do no harm. Okay, it should not be too stressful for the people that worry about the system at hand. We also need to have a decision-making hierarchy. Okay, and we need to focus on something. We need to prioritize what we must focus on when we make decisions. And with sustainable gardening, we focus mainly on preservation, conservation, and another keyword that we are going to adopt afterwards. It's regeneration. We want to build regenerative systems that will continue to live 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, because you know that they are self-sustainable. That's one of the main objectives. For that, we can use collaborative and ethical group discussions, having a different approach. And also, I told you that as architects, we are leaders, but now we need to have integrity in our leadership. We need to lead with core values, and we need to identify these values. And it needs to, empower our whole thought process. If you are only focusing on time to market, if you're only focusing on the topics at hand, meaning mapping out what is the existing system, where do you want to go for a certain feature, you're not building with integrity in mind. You don't have any core values. You're basically a bit numb. You're just doing what you're taught to do, but you're not leading. Remember, architects are lead builders. They're not executants. Well, they're not just, building things because we were told to. So we also have something called Agile Architecture. Let's see if it helps, okay, on that particular aspect. We have multiple definitions from Agile Architecture, CEF, TOGAF, a bunch of things, but I try to regroup what are the main principles behind that. We have documentation, design, continuously align everything. So we need to document the vision, the intent, the roadmap. That's actually pretty good to document the intent and not just the target. About design, they do discriminate the intentional design and the emergent design. Usually you have intentional designs with architects because we lead somewhere, right? And you have emergent designs most of the time from engineers because they are more specialized in what they do and they're more adaptive to the problems at hand, right? So they have a more tactical approach. So emergent architecture usually comes from engineers. And you can be an architect and an engineer at the same time. Okay, let's move on. You also have reversible design as a big topic, but that we have it in DevOps as well. We want to make sure that when we push something out there, that we can also roll back, okay, in order to reduce the impact of failures. That's also something that we want to achieve. And we want to continuously align product, organization, operations. So as a whole, we see that and we say, oh, maybe we already have the answer. We already have architecture 2.0 and it should be agile architecture, right? Actually, not that much. Agile architecture today, if you look at all this, it's just describing architecture as we do it. It's just traditional architecture. And if you listen to Gregor Orp, and if you read from him, he will tell you that it's actually just true architecture. It's just a better definition of it, because the outcome, it's not really different. We just have a better definition of what architecture should be. These are all very good techniques. That's what we do. It's still very highly complex and complicated. You've got a bunch of things describing what architecture is, and it's still not very well understood. And it's a bunch of new techniques, methodologies, and all. You're still a Swiss Army knife. So you're still hitting the wall of zombies at some point. You're still creating monsters. You just hit it with a different angle, and you're just hitting it with more faith in what you do, because you understand more what you're doing, but you're still hitting the wall at some point. So what must we focus on to stop monsters? Seriously, because I'm starting to panic. Is there even a solution, right? And all these monsters, and we need to breathe again. Sorry. All right. We had some context. We know that it's kind of a messy world out there. We know that we like it. We know that we have tried to explore new ways to care for all this mess that we have created. Now, let's apply it. Let's try to remember our training and apply it to our problem at hand. From our training, now we know change. We have a good mindset. We know how to have a fearless mindset about and focus on innovation. Innovation, some people will say, oh, it's just something that you can do if you don't have to deal with a legacy. Very wrong. Innovation can help you a lot on managing legacy systems. But innovation is about finding yourself your own rhythm, to care about your system, to be positive about it, and to move forward. It's being future driven, all right? And another part of it is to also enjoy the journey. If you focus on this, on your rhythm, on being positive and fearless, and sorry about fearless change because that's actually copyrighted more or less by a book, but that's what you need to be. That's a good mindset. If you have this mindset, you always go forward. That's pretty good. Then from your training, you want to have good footwork. You want to be agile, right? You want to be flexible. You want to move around. And for that, you have very strong learnings from DevOps. We have end-to-end agility as a strong foundation. We have reversibility in mind with rollout and all. We have a reduced impact of failure, so we can move quite faster. And we can probe and learn. We have new techniques like canary releases, A/B testing, all these things that came from the DevOps world that gives us good foundation in order to manage change. So we have learned that. We have learned how to make strong decisions as well, because we have learned to strategize by narrowing down options, also with Agile Architecture, because it states a bit better what should be architecture. And in that aspect, you got a full chapter in Agile Architecture, most of the time about architecture decision records and the fact that they should be collaborative decisions. So you involve a lot of persons, you're going to have balanced decisions, you're going to focus on the intent rather than the targets, and you're going to compare options and propose options in order to align everyone. These are very good techniques. These are very good techniques that we have. We have covered 3 different techniques, and like in martial arts, or when you go fighting, I used to be a fighter when I was younger. I used to go in the ring and all. But these are techniques, right? You learn them, you try to apply them, but it's not driving you. It's not what gets you on the ring. It's basically what you do on the ring. But now we need something more. We need something more than techniques. We need drivers. We need internal motivations, internal factors. We know how to move. We know what mindset we need to have on the ring, but how do we get in the ring? With what approach? This is what we need. We need drivers. The first driver that I propose is to move with simplicity. If we have simplicity as a target in our mind for architecture, then we're going to have strength. There is a lot of strength in simplicity, because simplicity gives you precision, exactly where to hit, so it's impactful. You know that thing, right, that Bruce Lee did back then, the 1-inch punch? It's just a very simple punch. He barely moves. And see how powerful it is, the impact that it can do? It's basically the same thing. You worry about very simple things. The rest, if you have a lean approach, you're not going to need it. You forget about it. You just have a focus on your 3 Ps, on sustainability, and you try to be simple to make a big impact. And for that, we also have KISS, right? Keep it stupidly simple. That's what we used to say. Now there is a proposition from one of our green advocate in Zenica, and she says, well, let's change the name, right? Let's call it Keep It Sustainably Simple. We want to target this. That's our motto. That's one of our objectives. The second objective would be to have a self-regenerative system. We want to have stamina. Okay, that's going to be our drive. We want to keep in the ring as long as possible. We just want to end up in the ring, to be thrown in there, but we want to stay there, maybe forever. We need to seek resilience, right? And for that, you have multiple things. We're going to focus on recycling. I don't know if you know, but there are 3 types of recycling. You have primary recycling, secondary recycling, and tertiary recycling. The primary one is you just reuse what you've done before, and you're doing exactly the same thing with the same materials. So you just basically copy and paste. The secondary one is you reuse the materials, you tweak it a bit, and you end up with something that has almost the same form, with the same constitution, but it's slightly different. Okay, you optimize things. And the third one is where you innovate when you transform things. You have all these materials, and with a bit of chemistry, you're going to transform your resources, and you're going to end up with a whole new product. Architects today, most of the time, they are stuck at the secondary level. They keep optimizing, they keep refining what they do and what they've been learning, right, with experience. But we need to go to the third one. We need to innovate. We need to transform what we've learned into something more positive, even more, sustainable for our products. And last but not least, we need to have heart, internal motivation, a strong motivating factor to get us on the ring. And that comes from core values. We need to seek meaning, internal meaning, right? And we need to approach it with humility, because we don't know everything. One of the main issues of some architects is that they think they already know their system, they have strong opinions and all. If you want to move beyond that, you need to tell yourself that actually you don't know what you don't know, right? So you need to approach things with humility, and you need to start learning how to go beyond your sphere of knowledge. That's how you get respect. That's also how you get respect from engineers as architects, because usually you have these clashes between architects and engineers. Will say, oh, but architects, they just draw maps and all, and they don't really understand what we do when we devise things. And on the other hand, architects will just say, oh, but the engineers, they don't understand the big picture and all. No, the architects also, they're the leads. They should show the example, and they should start being humble and tell the architects, yes, we don't understand what you're doing. We need to go to the engineers and say, you are more knowledgeable in what you do today. Now, can I help you on another approach, and can I help you, go beyond your own boundaries? And then you're trying as an architect to foster all this energy, right? To create what we call ikigai, right? Meaning, purpose for people. You can't have sustainable architectures if you don't have the people to sustain it. In order to make sure that people are behind your products, they're supporting it, and they become your products, then you need to find their meaning. What is their meaning in the IT world? Are they doing something they love? Are they doing something that we need? Are they doing something that we can pay them for? Are we doing something that they are good at? When we have this combination, yes, I do think that we have sustainable teams in order to support sustainable products. Now that we have all this, do we still feel monsters? We have a bunch of techniques. We have strong motivation and sustainability. We are going to target very different things. We are going to target simplicity. We are going to target impact. We are going to target, sorry, I missed my thread, but we are going to target a bunch of things that are going to give meaning to what we do. So once we have that, there is no good and bad architecture anymore. Okay, we have just intention, an objective, building for sustainability, and a bunch of tools, techniques, the things that we can use on the ring, right? And our drivers, we need to simplify, we need to save monsters to have a regenerative system. So that should be our motivation factor. Once we have that, I'm pretty sure it's not about winning anymore, but we are going to work further. We are going to go beyond our first, milestone or objective that we were looking at. There is peace and balance and simplicity. If you look at gardening, for example, well, it's quite peaceful. You look at it and everything is arranged, everything is tidied up. If you look at permaculture, it's fine because it's regenerative. It goes on forever. That's what we want to reach. And for that, we want to have the trees as a target, but we'll want to have something simple, just like this garden, something regenerative with core values that we need to define. What is defining us? What is moving us? And all this will multiply the impact of all our techniques. When I talk about techniques, I talk about change, innovation, and all. This will be a driving factor for this. We'll have continuous delivery and continuous deployment even faster, even better, because we are going to maintain it. We know why we are doing this. And we're going to have more impactful decisions because we will be targeting something more relevant for us as well. In order to apply all this and to make sure that it works, you also need, as an architect, to shift your posture from a practitioner to a teacher. So you need to accompany people. You can't do it on your own. So even if you manage all these things, all these monsters, all these zombies, you need to prove that it works, but you need to accompany someone and you need to make them ask themselves all these questions about simplicity. Is it simple? Is it regenerative? Is it aligned with our core values? Is it what we really want to do? So you start beginning to be a guide. You begin to be a guide for other people in order for them to become architects for sustainability as well. So now my proposition, based on this journey, we had some context. We need to fight monsters. We have an issue with ever-growing complexity. We have learned some tactical approaches, some very good why we should do things. Now my proposition of a new architect is a sustainable builder on top of being a lead builder in order to be more driven. For that, we need strong foundations. So my proposition is advising on simplicity. So be the champions of simplicity. We need to facilitate regenerative systems. So we need to provide this mindset about, okay, let's regenerate, let's keep things moving, let's recycle. And we also need to lead with core values in order to gain respect and align people with what we want to target. Then we have all the techniques on top of it. We have the techniques, the methodologies that were brought by Fearless Change and other different sources. We have continuous deployment, all the learnings from DevOps, and we have collaborative design, learnings from Agile Architecture, or through the best of traditional architecture. And we have the glue, engineering. We should not shun engineering as architects. We should remember that we are building technology. And sometimes we need to devise and we need to create things. It's not sometimes, every time we need to do that. So it's good that architects remember what they're doing for. We are helping engineering products as well. Okay. If we want to go beyond this map of my proposition of what as an architect 2.0 is, we can explore different things. We can explore art with music, storytelling, even martial arts. I did it a bit. You can explore nature, and you have this amazing talk from Jessica Kerr, for example, where she would compare teams as forests and individuals are trees in this forest. And you can learn a lot by, studying nature. You can learn from philosophy as well to go beyond good and bad architecture. And from science, neuroscience and all. There are a lot of talks from Linda Rising that are really interesting about how to include all this work into our everyday work in IT. I will finish with that sentence, that quote from Nietzsche, if you don't mind. The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die. As well, the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions, they cease to be mind. I think we should remember that as architects, because if we just, do whatever we're used to do, if we don't innovate, if we go look at beyond the value propositions that we have today, I think we're not going to be relevant anymore. So my proposition for you is to have this driver, architects, as being the champion of sustainability. And thank you for accompanying me during this journey. And if you have any questions, please do so.
Thank you, Adrian, for the very enlightening talk. There is one question on the on the Q&A, but unfortunately, we don't have that much time left. So I invite you to find Adrian in the room. He says that you're gonna stay in room 4 for the rest of the day in the morning.
Yep.
Yep. So find him, find him where he's sitting at the table, and please feel free to ask questions directly. But I invite all the participants now to help me and say thanks for Adrian. You can type claps and thank yous there to show appreciation for him. And Adrian, thank you so much. And everyone, enjoy
Thank you.
the rest of the conference. Feel free to change rooms and find the next topic you'd like. And I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.